Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a fantasy slash comedy from Greece, Greek language English subs, released in the year 2014, directed by Yannis Vaslemis, and this film is called Norway. So Norway is set in Athens in 1984. You've got a vampire named Xanos. Now Xanos is travelling in a train and he is looking for a friend. Now this friend is elusive, he just can't find him anywhere, and his quest for his whereabouts leads him to a very seedy nightclub. This nightclub is full of drug addicts, drug dealers and prostitutes. And so when Xanos gets into the club, this is where we realise that this vampire is very different from your typical vampire, because not only is he unable to do a lot of things the traditional vampire can't do, but he's also unable to lose the beat of music. That if the music stops in his heart, he's going to cease to exist. And so he goes to these nightclubs and he has to keep up tempo. And so in this nightclub, he meets this prostitute that immediately captivates him. And the prostitute says that she can help him, but at the same time, he needs to help her. And basically what he needs to do is a job that she's going to assign him. So he doesn't know what this job entails, but it's enough to create that mystery that makes him follow this prostitute out of this nightclub and venture down underneath the ground into this bunker-like environment. This is where the true intentions of this prostitute are uncovered, and it turns out that Xanos is in grave danger. So whether or not he can find his friend and at the same time steer clear of the danger that is basically been thrust upon him is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Norway. I didn't know really what to expect with this film. As far as Greek cinema is concerned, there have been a few good Greek films recently. You know, you've got Dogtooth, and you've also got a recent film called Suntan. So, although I'm not totally familiar with Greek cinema, the movies that I have watched from this part of the world have actually been very impressive. And so, I thought Norway is definitely a much more lower budget. And so I had to give it a little bit of leeway as far as that's concerned. But when I saw the trailer, I thought, this looks very crazy. This looks very weird. And this is exactly my type of movie. And so I did have a lot of excitement coming into it because it was a new experience, but I had my skepticism based on the fact that it was a lesser known movie. And so after seeing the film, I will say that it is incredibly crazy. This is a very strange film, and the biggest positive to this movie was the ability of the director to create his own world. And that world is a very quirky, very offbeat, and the offbeat nature of the world is told through the visuals. And this is a low budget movie, but the director uses the low budget expertly well. And the prime example of this is at the start of the film there is a train set. Now the train set obviously doesn't cost anything, but what we realise is that the train that is on this little toy train set was actually the train the vampire is travelling in. And so this is not going to cost too much to actually create. And what the director does in turn is that not only has he actually used something very cheap and it looks cheap, but it creates that environment, it creates that world, it creates that sort of sense that you're watching something that is otherworldly, you're watching something that's like a dream. And so immediately it captivates you, it traps you inside this bubble, where I thought to myself, alright, well, where is this director going to take us? And I thought that was just really intelligently done, and it showcases that this director has a lot of talent behind the camera. And so, okay, he creates his world, he creates that sense of caricature, and that caricature is complemented very well by the offbeat lore of this vampire, is that he's created something a little bit different. That takes a lot of confidence. A lot of people are going to watch this movie expecting a traditional vampire film, but it is something a little bit different. It does create a shadow of its own, and that shadow is through the music. And the music not only contributes something new to the vampire lore, but it also gives you that 1980s feel that the movie wants. And so it's a very 80s, it's very nightclub, dancing sort of mood that the film has. I wouldn't say it's a musical, but the music does play a pivotal role. And it's actually quite funny where this vampire starts dancing, and is very awkward dancing, but you know why he's doing it is because ultimately he has to live. And so there's so much interest in the first 10 minutes of this movie, and I thought to myself, this is going to be really good. And so the overall, the mood of the whole film, as I said, it does a great job in capturing you, but unfortunately there is a lot of aspects in this movie that I thought were a little bit disappointing. But the runtime of this movie does play to its advantage, which once again shows the self-awareness of this director, is that it goes for 70 minutes, and this movie feels like it's taking a lot of risks, but the runtime, it compensates for those risks, is that if they don't work, it's going to be over before you know it, so it doesn't have enough time to really linger on the risks that the movie is taking. And so I thought that was, again, another intelligent move from this director, is because the negatives, although they are there and it does weigh the film down, it doesn't derail the movie completely because it's over before you know it. And so the movie does have a very fast tempo. The movie does get to what it wants to do very quickly, and it doesn't really muck about doing that. But unfortunately, I just don't think the overall characters and the script have the confidence that the atmosphere has. And so the atmosphere is playing center stage, and yes, some crazy things are happening. Yes, this is definitely a movie you haven't seen before, but unfortunately there's nothing to really complement that and carry it. And so you've got characters that I thought, alright, Xanos was interesting, he was this different kind of vampire, but I just don't think the script allowed this actor to really showcase a very vibrant character and a very caricature sort of nature that the atmosphere has, but the character just felt a little bit bland in comparison. And so I didn't really like that, and I thought the overall quest of this vampire just could have been a little bit more interesting. It felt like this is a movie where a car has lost its brakes, is going at an absolute high speed. It's a wild ride, you're basically going from one place to another very fast, and you're bracing for that impact. And instead of being, completely knocked out by that impact, you crash, you just get out of the car and you walk away casually. It just doesn't have the impact at the end to really nail you to the seat. It just feels like a movie you've just walked away from a horrific smash and you're just going to forget about it in a few hours. And so it just doesn't have that lasting quality, which is a great shame, because the movie should have had that lasting quality because of the fact it's such an outrageous kind of feel. It's a very charming film, as I said, through aspects like the train set, and it just creates a world of its own, but unfortunately the characters inside this world aren't interesting enough and can't quite capitalize on what the overall visuals have created. And so that was a big problem. As far as the comedy is concerned, I thought there were one or two chuckles here and there. It's not an overly funny film, but I have been told that if you're a Greek national, you will understand the references a lot better than an outsider like I am. And so maybe this will appeal to you a lot more. But I still thought there were positives to this film that I would make it, recommend it for at least one viewing. As I said, it's a very outrageous film. It's a movie that does take you back to the 1980s, and it's just a film that has a lot of confidence in creating something different, but unfortunately doesn't quite know how to execute that idea in a way where you feel as though everything is being capitalized upon. So overall, it's a movie I would recommend, but you're probably not going to want to watch it a second time, which is a great shame, because there's a lot of material here that if it was realized, it could have been an absolute classic. So overall, for Norway, going to give this one 2 stars. It's not a complete waste, but unfortunately I just thought it was a wasted opportunity. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.